All right. Welcome back to A Feminine Touch God's Way. We're so excited to dive into this next episode on stewardship. Specifically, we are going to discuss stewarding the relationship women have with their siblings, just in the process of growing up, but also mainly as adults. Okay, Abby, this is crazy. So this is our first episode long distance.
Yes, the first of many for sure.
Yeah, unfortunately, because we're not neighbors.
Not yet.
Yeah, no. But I already miss you. I know you were here last weekend, and thankfully you'll be visiting next weekend. But I'm glad we're doing this so you can be more of a constant in my life.
Yeah, same. I think this will be really good for not just for the people who get to listen to this, but also for ourselves.
Yeah. How has your week been?
My week has been, so it's Monday, so the week did just start, but it has already been, like, I'm tired already. Like, it's just going to be a long one. We have a new girl who just started coming to our school.
What?
Yeah, today is her first day. So that was pretty exciting. It also resulted in a bit of extra work for me, just because one more kid just means one more person to keep track of.
Yeah.
But also I think this will be very fruitful for this little girl to be in this school. She's coming from the public school into a Christian school full of people that love the Lord. And then she's part of my church family. So it's also an opportunity for me to disciple a young little girl that goes to my fellowship body. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's awesome. And today was the first day of that. And I'm trying to think what else. Yeah. And that is kind of the biggest thing right now, I guess.
Yeah. I apologize to our listeners if you hear a random little cry. My son is being put to bed right now. My husband is being awesome, and he's like, I got this. I'll put him to bed so you can go record. So, yeah, he's the real MVP.
He's the real, oh, yeah. Wait, I thought Neo went to bed an hour ago.
Yeah, well, that didn't happen. So,
okay.
Yeah. I can
real life right there.
Yeah. So your biggest thing in your week was a new student. My biggest thing is my son does not like tomatoes at all. Like, we had a feud over tomatoes today.
Is it because, like, he doesn't... Are you talking about, like, cherry tomatoes or...
Yeah. No, I was like, I'll just cut up some little tomatoes with him to eat with his eggs, because he loves eggs. Uh-huh. But if the egg got tomato juice on it, he would put it in his mouth like he was gonna love it. And then I won't gag on the mic for any of our listeners who don't like that sound, but full on gagged, and I was like, dude, it was rough. It was real rough.
So it wasn't even the gushing of the tomato, it was just, there's tomato juice on my egg, Mom, and how could you?
Yes, that's what it was. He's like, this looks delicious but tastes disgusting, and you could tell he felt like tricked the whole time. I was just
Poor
like
Neo.
But it was probably wrong of me, but he would scream because he was upset, and since his mouth was wide open, I was like, opportunity. I just put a tomato in there, and he didn't spit it out. He just gagged.
Oh,
it was rough.
Neo. Torturing my nephew.
Yeah. So okay. That was my day today.
Your day sounds more fun.
It is more interesting, that's for sure. But then afterward, one last detail of my son's eating habits today. I was like, okay, I'll give you grapes because I know you like purple grapes, but he thought that they were tomatoes still. Like, so he was screaming, and I was like, no, you like this. And I took some convincing before. He's like, I don't know what you did to these tomatoes. I hated them this morning, but now I like them, and you're really confusing me, Mom. It was rough. Yeah.
He's like, you're telling me these aren't the same?
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, diving into stewarding relationships, I would love to hear you just kind of briefly introduce your 3 siblings and because I mean, obviously I have siblings too, but you still live with, well, off and on 2 of your siblings, because one of them comes back from school and goes. So I'd love for you just to tell us about the parish siblings.
Oh my goodness, you have opened such a door just now, because literally it is my favorite thing to talk about my family. When people ask me to try to get me to talk about myself, it normally makes me uncomfortable, but whenever I'm trying to get to know people, I always start bragging on them. So I'm excited to do that. I did not know you were going to ask that. Okay, so Gabe is my oldest sibling. He's my big brother. And him and I are really close in age. We're less than 18 months apart. He was born and then I came. Oh, I just clapped. He was born and then boom, I came right after. So we grew up really close. He is married to you, obviously. He's got 1 kid and he's the only parish sibling that's married. He's currently stationed in Georgia at Fort Moore, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I was about to say Fort Benning.
Yeah.
Anyways, so he is up there doing that. He loves the Lord. He's so smart. He went to West Point. That has nothing to do with his smartness, but he's the kid that growing up who, if something had to be figured out, whether it was a broken tool or a technological issue or anything like that, he was the one that could solve it, and he made it look easy. And he also is so passionate about anything he decides to care about. It's kind of 0 to 60 with him, from my perspective. And it's kind of interesting because you definitely know him more now than I do. So I'll try not to talk about him too much because he's also your husband. But Gabe is definitely someone who in my life has showed me what it looks like to really be passionate about things and not be afraid about being passionate about them. And also, just the final thing about Gabe is I guess I have 2 things about Gabe. He, by God's grace, is the one who the Lord used to usher in a reformation for our family. So he was the one who started really looking into more biblical theology, more reformed theology, and started challenging my dad with it. And as a result, my whole family is now reformed by God's grace. So that's really cool. And then another thing about Gabe is that he has extremely varied musical tastes. And because of that, he has such a skill set to be able to interact with so many different kinds of crowds whenever they want to be entertained musically. Just having music in the background or to enjoy music on a car ride, because he knows so many different genres well. And that's always something that I've really admired about him. He makes things lively. So that's Gabe. And he is, after just bragging about him, I'm blanking on his age. I'm going to say he's 27. Is that right? Or is he 28?
No, he's 27. You got it.
Okay, good. He's 27 currently. And then there's me. And then I have my younger sister, Chloe. Her and I are 3 years apart. And whenever we were kids growing up, I would never say that we were enemies, but she definitely would have.
Wait, didn't you tell me that you guys had literally tape?
Yes.
Splitting the room at one point?
Yes, so growing up, the brothers shared a room and the girls shared a room. And me and Chloe had measured our room and divided it equally into 2 separate halves. And it was so that I could have my stuff on my side, she could have her stuff on her side. And it was because I was so much more neat and tidy than her, and it would drive me crazy that she would not keep our room clean. But the tables have kind of turned because I'm so busy right now. My room is kind of a mess, and her room is not that way.
Wow, so the tape was your idea.
The tape was definitely my idea. Another reason because... Yeah. But it definitely backfired on me because her side of the room was the side that had the door. So if you wanted to get into the room, you had to go onto her side, and I always had to pay a penance. So this will give you a good insight into Chloe. If you want to come into your own bedroom, I would have to surrender one of my own toys or $1 or be her slave for the next 30 minutes just so that I could gain entrance into my own room. Okay.
Oh my gosh. I'm so excited to talk about just that relationship because it sounds like at that point your relationship was not well stewarded. It was very much at odds.
It was probably. That was when we were pretty young, though. It was not whenever we were in our teen years.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was picturing an older version.
No, that was like under 12 before either of us hit puberty.
Okay, so when you say she was your slave, what did you have to do?
Well, I would be her slave. She was never my slave. It never worked out that way for me. And basically, one thing that our parents had as punishment was a thing that, like, if you wrong a brother or a sister, one of the potential punishments, depending on what your sin against them was you have to pay them restitution. And if you don't have money or toys that they want, then you have to be a servant to them for however long the parents deem is appropriate. So Chloe took that idea and ran with it, and she was like, yeah, if you want to come into our room and touch my side, you're going to have to be my slave for 5 hours and do whatever I say. So it was like a really hefty price to pay to even gain entrance into your own bedroom.
I bet your parents had no idea.
I eventually brought it to their attention, and it eventually came to the point where I didn't have to ask permission to come to my own room.
Oh, that's a win right there.
Definitely. But that's Chloe. She's so strong-willed. She has the brightest, most beautiful blue eyes.
That's true.
Very good at making people feel like she's good at making people feel important, I think. She is really good at seeing things that people would benefit from and then helping get that gift to them. Like, she's good at getting gifts, I guess would be a good way of saying that. She is diligent and a hard worker, but that's definitely something that was trained into her. Now, there are a bunch of stories of how when we were growing up as a kid, she would always be the supervisor and we would be the workers.
Yeah.
But now she's definitely very much the mindset of, hey, I'm a part of the team and I want everything to grow and I'll be a part of that. So that's Chloe. She's also so clever. And I don't mean clever just in funniness, even though she is very funny. She's just witty and she's sharp. So she's fun to interact with, and a lot of times she has me pretty speechless because I'm not the most witty person. And that's actually, that's something I would say I admire in her because I don't have it myself. And she's really confident. Yeah. It's really cool to see how confident she is. She just doesn't display many fears. She has fears of things, but like when it comes to fear of people and what they might think, that's not normally a fear that she has. So that's Chloe.
Wow. Yeah, I love Chloe. Yeah, okay, keep going.
Chloe's pretty awesome. And then my younger brother, Quinn, he's 5 years younger than I am. And he's the baby of the family. And he is amazing. So all of my siblings, I have a lawn care business that I do in the summer. It's kind of been my job on the side since I was 12. So I've been doing it for 13 years now. And I started doing it with Gabe, and that built him and I's relationship tremendously. And then I mowed for a little while with Chloe, but right now Quinn is my primary mowing partner, and I've been mowing with him the longest. And it has strengthened our relationship so much because when you work alongside someone and you go through hard things, whether it just be extremely hot days where you're exhausted but you still have to keep going, or you have equipment trouble, or you have employees that don't show up, or whatever. Not that our employees don't show up, but I have a close working relationship with Quinn just because we intimately have to problem solve with one another all of the time. And I have really, really loved, so that's my business side relationship with Quinn. It's a little different than my other two sibling relationships because of work in that facet. But other than that, Quinn, growing up my whole life, has always been kind of like my little buddy. I remember before he was born, and Mom and Dad told us the day that they were pregnant with him, because I was 5, And I immediately was like, I want a little brother. I want a little brother so bad. And I told my mom that. I was like, Mom, could you please make a boy this time?
Yeah, get on that.
I was like, come on, Mom. Get to it. Oh, I just snapped again. Anyways, come on, Mom. Snap, snap. Get to it. And she was like, well, Abby, if the Lord wants you to have a brother, you're just going to have to pray for that. And diligently, literally, I kid you not, for however long she was pregnant, from the moment I knew, I prayed every single night to have a little brother. And then when Quinn was born and he was a boy, I was just so happy. I don't know why. I guess I just kind of felt like I have a little sister, now I have a little brother. And from then on, like, even though he didn't like this, because Quinn is all boy, he grew up being very like, I'm tough and I'm rugged and I'm a kid and I love being outside and getting dirty. But for me, I just really, as a little kid, I just loved, he was like my little brother and I just loved that. There was an element of care to him that I didn't really have for Chloe because she's closer to my age, or for Gabe because he's older than me. And then as Quinn has grown up, especially in the last 3 years, it's been so cool to see him going from being a boy to he's a man, and he has a deep love for the Lord, and he is so intelligent, and he has this ability to reason and to use logic that is very, very, he's trained his mind well, and he's mindful of the fact that to have a strong mind is a way that you can worship the Lord. So I think that Quinn is someone who is disciplined in having a well-trained mind, a well-trained body, a well-trained, like he's diligent in his relationships. And I just really appreciate the diligence of Quinn. And it's been really cool, actually, in the last 3 years since I've graduated from college, to come home and be around my younger siblings and to look up to them in some ways and to admire them in some ways. Because my whole life, I've always admired and looked up to my brother, Gabe, because he's just naturally older than I am. So there's just that natural, oh, you look up to your older sibling. But it's been really cool to see Chloe and Quinn just become so sanctified that they fall in love with the Lord in a way that I just think is so beautiful and that I think is worthy of imitation. And I could say that of all 3 of my siblings.
Yeah, I've always really enjoyed, I feel like when I married Gabe, I got 3 pretty awesome siblings. But cool. I mean, you guys are so fun. But I definitely know that I am not one of the siblings in a way too, because I mean, from my perspective looking in, you guys, you were homeschooled. Mm-hmm. You guys really were and kind of still are each other's best friends.
Yeah, which is such a blessing from the Lord, because so Gabe and I in high school, we were super close. We were definitely one another's best friends, even though neither of us would have said that at the time, because who wants to say your best friend is your brother whenever you're 15 and 17? But we definitely were, and the Lord has used that to be very good for Gabe and I's relationship. And then also, Chloe and Quinn, they are really close in age, and they are, I wouldn't say they're one another's best friends, but they're definitely friends with one another. And I'm friends with all of my siblings, and that's a huge blessing.
Yeah. I would even say it's kind of rare. I have not met many people. I've definitely met some people where they're like, oh yeah, I'm best friends with my sister, but they might be estranged from the other ones. Or so maybe for some of our listeners who are listening to you and they're thinking, I literally could not even imagine saying half the things that she just said about her siblings about mine. What are some ways that you have found through the years that have helped strengthen those bonds? You mentioned work, which maybe go into that a little bit more, because it sounds like that was something, a tool the Lord really used to strengthen those bonds. But what are some other ways our listener can be intentional in trying to cultivate the kind of fruit you seem to be enjoying with your siblings? And maybe share some hardships too, of moments when it wasn't like that and how you got through that.
That's good. That's good. So I'll bounce off the work one first, because that's just the easiest one. My mom and dad, I guess to back it up a little bit, my parents' commitment to their children is why their children are close to one another. So I won't dwell on that for too much because I understand this is a podcast that is written to women more our age that have siblings, not so much to parents, but you'll be a parent one day, and just keep that in mind. You set the tone of your home. And my mom and dad just set a very good tone that made it very clear that not being friends was not an option. So there was that. So anyway, so my mom and dad set the tone for us as kids. And then on top of that, we worked together, and we worked together. And I genuinely think that whenever you go through just crappy stuff with people, it builds your relationship with them. And I think if you asked my brother Gabe, he would definitely be able to speak to this about going through basic with people, or going through West Point with people, or going through boot camp with individuals. Like, there's just a bond there that doesn't exist between others. And in a similar way, whenever you're working and you're going through something hard, and I don't mean hard like, oh, I hate this. I just mean work is hard. It requires commitment to not quit. And whenever you go through that, it builds a bond that is very, very good. And my parents made it very clear that we all had to have a job. And by God's grace, the Lord allowed Gabe to start a lawn care business that later employed me, that later, after I bought the business from Gabe, employed Chloe for a short period of time, and that later employed and now is co-ran by my brother Quinn. And that has been so good for all of us because it has just pushed us into one another, because this work still needs done. So even if you have beef with someone, or you've got a bad day, or you've got an injury, like, it just forces you to go, okay, I might be mad with you, but I still have to work with you. Or I might be hurt and you're going to have to pick up the slack. Because there were days where I would twist my ankle and Quinn would have to do the lion's share of the work. And that bred so much gratitude in my heart, and so much just stick-to-itiveness in Quinn. So just things like that. Working is definitely one way to build a relationship with your siblings.
How would you say, sorry, I just want to pause you there, because I feel like work isn't a foreign thing to a lot of siblings, especially if they're in a Christian home. But like, I feel like it's really tempting to waste that opportunity. So like, instead of saying like, oh, I have to do the dishes, stay out of my lane, like, what is a heart posture? What is something they can say or do that might open up that door that you're describing?
Okay, so this, I think, started with me and Gabe. So, not yesterday, several years ago, whenever Gabe still lived at home, before I was 15, Gabe and I just kind of coexisted with one another. It was very much, I kind of worshiped the ground he walked on, just saying. And he was like, this is just my annoying kid sister who won't get out of my way. And then what resulted in the summer of me being 15 and Gabe being 16 going into 17 is that both of us kind of lost both of our best friends that summer because they started dating one another. So his best friend was a guy named Matt. My best friend was a chick named Amy. Matt and Amy started dating. And then after that point, like, they were lost to the world, and me and Gabe were kind of down and out. And as a result of that, Gabe and I were like, well, I guess we have no one else to turn to. We might as well start enjoying one another's company. And as a result of that, Gabe just took the lead, honestly, more so than I did, which is crazy because I'm a people person. But Gabe took the lead in that and was very much of the mindset of, I think the Lord used it to open his eyes to help him see that Abbey is my sister and she is a friend I have that won't ever leave. So it's valuable to pour into this person and be poured into by her. And I'm going to do things that I enjoy doing with her, and I will invite her along with me. So there's that perspective of being the older sibling and saying, invite the younger one along, or just being more of a peer-to-peer, invite them along with you. And then also being able to say, I don't necessarily particularly enjoy these things, but I will enjoy them because you do. And I will engage in things because you enjoy them. And I will make the things that we already have to do fun. We already have to wash the dishes. Let's turn on music and sing our hearts out while we're doing it. We already have to mow. Let's capitalize on the time in between the yards where we're driving and we have 10 minutes and have a conversation about something that matters. Let's talk about the Lord. Let's talk about what's going on at church. Let's talk about our younger two siblings. Let's just talk and engage. And Gabe was really the first friend that I had done that for me. Someone, and I don't know if I was the first friend that had done that for him, but I responded in kind. But Gabe took the initiative in that, and then that resulted in me turning around and taking the initiative in a similar way with my siblings. So not just going, okay, I'm going to put my head down and get the work done, but I'm going to do this intentionally, and I'm going to choose to love my siblings, and I'm going to search out ways for them to be either sanctified in this, or to find joy in this, or to build and strengthen our bond through not only just the bonds of work, but just also the bonds of being related. So it takes mindfulness, that's for sure.
Yeah. Wow. And it sounds like you walked away from your relationship specifically with Gabe. I'm just thinking like, wow, some of the dynamics you described, like I now interact with Gabe in that way as his wife, and it's obviously different, but low-key, it feels like the Lord's used that relationship to prepare you for marriage one day.
Yeah, I think that the way that you interact with your brother and your sister, if the Lord has gifted you, because your siblings are a gift. If you have them, they are a blessing. And the way that you interact with your siblings directly correlates, I think, to how you will interact with your future spouse. Because you will be your best or your worst around them, and you will be your best or your worst around your spouse. And I think that's true also to how you interact with... I think that's also true to how you interact with your parents as well, but it's a different dynamic.
Yeah, for sure. I know I asked you another question. It was super good earlier. Oh, did you?
You wrote down, like, how have we strengthened our sibling bonds, and then you asked, like, how things have changed, like, how they might have been bad in the past and then gone to being better now. And I kind of touched on that with Gabe.
Yeah. Okay. So in your interacting, so obviously right now it looks a little bit different because you're still in the home. You now are all adult siblings interacting together.
Yeah.
Has there been any way, like the way that you interact with them, have you noticed that you're like, wow, this, or maybe even watching the way your parents interact with your siblings in front of you, like has given you tools that you can walk into for when you're a mom one day or a wife, or just, do you have examples of that?
Yeah, let me think. It's hard for me a little bit to interact with it in terms from momhood, because and that will probably be better for whenever you talk about things, but even though I'm the oldest girl, I'm still also very much, in a lot of ways, a peer to Chloe and Quinn. Like, we're in similar life stages, similar levels of spiritual development. So I don't think of myself as really higher than them. And I don't mean that in a prideful way, but like, you're definitely several steps above your son. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Thank goodness you're not in diapers anymore.
Yeah. But I would describe you are a little more motherly in nature, a little bit.
Yes, I am. But I also hated that as a kid growing up, and would take active steps to not be motherly.
Okay. All right.
Like my siblings, I don't know if any of our listeners have seen the TV show Avatar: The Last Airbender, but there's a character in it named Katara, and she's the main chick. And my siblings all the time would say that I am like Katara. And the truth is that I am like Katara. And I would love that praise all of the time, except for whenever they would talk about how motherly Katara is. And for whatever reason, that just riled me up, because I wanted so badly to just be like I just, as a little kid, as I was homeschooled, so I didn't have very many friends outside of my family, and I just longed for friendship so deeply, and I didn't realize what was right in front of me, which is the friendship of my brothers and my sister. But as a little kid, you're not cognitively aware of that. So anytime my siblings, specifically, actually no, any of them, anytime they'd call me motherly, it just like flipped a switch in my mind and made me get so frustrated because I was like, I don't want to be your mom. I want to be your peer. I want to be your friend. I just want to be your sister. I don't like, it was hard as a kid. I didn't like that. Even though I naturally, I'm sure I was that way all the time. Like I probably more so than I was aware of.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, sorry, did you have more you wanted to say about that?
No.
So to answer your question of how does interacting with my siblings translate into how I could see future interacting with spouse or children, I also would like to extend that to how you interact with your siblings leans into how you will interact with your friends. I think that one thing that the Lord has been very good to help me see, especially in the last 5 years, is that I get to be a primary sanctifying agent in Gabe and Chloe and Quinn's lives. So the Lord has, for whatever reason, chosen me to be their sister. And I don't take that lightly. It is, in a way, a job. It is a job that is attached with so much joy and so many blessings, but it is still a task. And the Lord desires holiness and sanctification and one day glory for his children. And by God's grace, all of my siblings, by God's grace, they're all saved. And because of that, I get to interact with them. And in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, how can I be used by the Lord to make them more into the likeness and image of Jesus Christ? Or how is God using them to sanctify me to be more like him? So that is always kind of either consciously or subconsciously in the background in my interactions with them. And I think that that really will serve me well one day in whenever I have a spouse, just because I know marriage is so sanctifying. And if I'm able to come into marriage thinking, how can I be sanctified by you? And how can you be sanctified by me? And how can we grow closer together as we're simultaneously growing closer to the Lord? Then I think that both parties are better off because of that awareness.
Wow. Yeah, it sounds like our siblings can be such a gold mine for preparation for the next step and for sanctification in the current season. Like, wow. And it's so easy just to forget that, oh my gosh, I just had sisters. I didn't have a brother, so I can't relate to that dynamic that you have, which is so awesome that the Lord gave you that. But my sisters, like they are a gift. They're not somebody you can just be like, I'm done with you. Goodbye. Like
yeah, like you can't disown them.
No, that's not how it works.
Yeah. And to add to that, I think that one thing that people do is they squander their relationships with their siblings. And I think that is such a shame because there are so many young girls that I interact with that'll say things to me along the lines of, I'm just so ready to be married. I'm ready to get out of the house. Or I'm ready for a boyfriend. Or I'm ready to leave for college. Or I'm just done. I'm done with being home. And I heard girls at college say that to me a lot. And I hear it less now just because of where I live locationally. But that is the voice of a young girl who is discontented what God has given her and who's demanding something different. And the truth is, if you're listening to this and you have siblings, God has given you your brother or your sister or your brothers or sisters. And they are your training ground. They are square one for relationships. And if you are not being a good steward of your brother or your sister, then what makes you think that you have any claim or any right to be gifted with another person if you can't even handle what God has already put in your feeble hands? Like, we are finite. And I say this of myself. I am limited. And it would be prideful and wrong of me to think that I deserve a husband or I deserve a spouse or I deserve more friends if I'm not even rightly caring for the most intimate friends that the Lord has given me, which are my siblings.
Wow. That is so convicting. Oh my goodness. I remember thinking something similar during COVID because I think for a lot of people, COVID forced you to face your siblings because
you couldn't escape them.
no, unless you had money, I didn't. So
Just
like,
trapped.
yeah, it just forced families to be together. And I think for a lot of families, it either like was a bomb that just everybody was like, I need out of here, or it was the thing that brought them together, which, is interesting because it's just highlighting what's already in people's hearts,
Yeah.
But I think for me, when I went home during COVID, that was very hard for me because I wish that I could say that I have stewarded the relationship with my sisters like you have with your siblings, but I just didn't see the big picture at that age. Like they were just my siblings, So I wish that I had that mindset early on. And I think that's such a blessing. And I think it's my prayer that our listeners can, if they're still in a position, and even if you are an adult and you don't live together, like you can still steward the relationship you have with your siblings, obviously. Like it's not like, oh, it's over. Like that is the God we serve. He takes things that are broken and he knits them together, and he does that by his grace. So
Praise God.
It's never too late
for sure.
to cultivate that friendship.
Just tacking into that, there was a time in my family's life, and maybe we can go into this more in another podcast with Gabe's permission, but there was a time on my family's end where my family's relationship, and my relationship specifically, was very strained with Gabe whenever he left for college, because he was really struggling with his relationship with the Lord, and he was living in sin, and that put a lot of strain onto our family. But the Lord has redeemed that time. And since then, Gabe has turned from that sin and confessed it as sin and repented from it. And it has resulted in so many good things. Like his repentance has resulted in so many good things. But there was a time where it seemed as if all that was beautiful had turned to ash. And there was great mourning in my family because there was, you said it yourself, our family's very tightly bound. And it was as if someone that we were still bound to live life to was untying the tether that had been so intricately woven. And that was a hard 2-ish years for our family. But the Lord, by his goodness and grace, did not allow Gabe to continue in that lifestyle. And now we move forward as a family that's much more united than even we were before that, which is a huge blessing.
Yeah, it's been really cool. And I don't think he would mind me sharing this, but I think it could be encouraging for some of our listeners who maybe you have a relationship with a sibling and you just, maybe that sibling's not a believer and you're just like, I don't even know how to talk to him or her because they don't love Christ and they don't even speak my lingo. They like this, and this, or we're in different planets, whatever. Yeah. I honestly think that because of your family's faith and your faith and Chloe's faith and Quinn's faith in Christ's perfect sacrifice and God's grace and his ability to go after the lost sheep and bring them back, because you guys knew that graciousness about our Father and that faith that you had in him never wavered, that I think was very compelling for Gabe, because versus, let's say you're like, yeah, you're too far gone. You screwed up bad. Like, well, why would that sibling come back to that environment? Yeah, that's a good point. It's just, I think it's so cool how God uses his people to sanctify his people. Like, he loves to use relationships to build his kingdom. And I think the relationship of a sibling is one of those pivotal, like you said, it is the training ground for the family unit. And if you just ignore the training for family life, you are doing yourself such a disservice because you're not ready.
Yeah.
You're just not.
Yeah.
You know?
Not as ready as otherwise would be. And like you said, it's not irredeemable, but it is harmful.
Yes.
And I also feel for people who don't have siblings. Like, if you don't have siblings, search out godly friends. But this is specifically a sibling podcast episode.
Yeah. But
it makes me think of, I did want to share this scripture verse. It makes me think of Ecclesiastes 4, verse 12, I think. Let me look. Yeah, it's 4:12, where it says, And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, two will withstand him, and a threefold cord is not quickly broken. So the Lord has gifted you with siblings and people who will surround you. Your siblings are the initial people who, Lord willing, will be the people who surround you that are part of that threefold cord that is not easily broken. And by building strong relationships with them in your youth or in your young adulthood, or even as you get older, it allows you to have a support system your whole life that you can walk through life with that is difficult to be prevailed upon against. And that means you'll have better spiritual strength and resiliency and relational strength, and just all aspects and facets of your life can be improved upon by having people in your life, specifically people that you are so intimately tied to as a brother or a sister.
Yeah. I think that is a perfect note to end this episode, unless you have one more quick thought.
Yes, I know that we're getting close to time. Let me look at my notes real quick. Yeah, I do have one more thing I'd like to say, if you can give me a minute for it.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
The discussion of siblings, and I should have said this more at the beginning, but it cannot be viewed apart from the idea of the family. So, understanding, okay, what is the purpose of a godly family? And you can read Deuteronomy 6 and it'll tell you more about how godly families are meant to operate. But for the sake of time, godly families are meant to operate by creating more godly children, who then go on to create more godly children. That's a very, very short synthesis of it. And as I have matured in my faith, one thing that I take as a responsibility as a daughter to Todd and Cindy Parrish, I understand that part of my role in helping my family be more godly is helping the people who I rub shoulders with on a daily basis, so my parents and my siblings become more godly. So, because families are meant to become more like Christ, I become an extension of my mom and dad, and hoping and praying for my siblings to become more holy, and encouraging them and pushing them towards holiness. And they do the same for me. It's an iron sharpens iron type of lifestyle that benefits my family. We are able to push one another forward in righteousness, and not just push one another forward, but like walk hand in hand as we're learning together what it looks like to be more like Christ. So the reason I say all of that is because if my mom and dad hadn't laid a foundation, if my mom and dad hadn't said, hey, we want you as our kid to be holy, and we want that for all of our kids, then I would not have as much of a framework to work out of whenever I'm thinking of how do I interact with my siblings. So if I see a sibling in sin, or if I see a sibling be rude, or if I see a sibling do something wonderful, I have a framework of how to interact with them of, oh, praise godly behavior, encourage it, oh, correct, or call out, or point out how it doesn't align with Scripture, behavior that doesn't align with Scripture. So I'm able to interact with them in a God-honoring way because my parents have taught me what God-honoring relationships look like. And my siblings are just the practice ground for that.
It's really good. All right. I think we are out of time, unfortunately. But thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to talking to you again soon.